This time I'd like to introduce our next storyteller. Joe Fusco Jr. is a poet, a humorist, and a contributor to Worcester magazine. He will offer a look at the, I guess we could call it a revolving door of neighbors he's encountered during his 30 years in the same house. Joe, the stage is yours.
So how you doing? Too loud? Sorry. Probably shouldn't have had that third drink. So I am the elder statesman of my neighborhood. My wife Cindy and I, we've lived in the same house for 30 years. We've raised 4 children in that home, and they are in the process of raising 9 of our grandchildren, all within 20 minutes of our house. So Cindy and I are finally empty nesters. And in the 30 years we've lived on Alvarado Avenue, we've had many different neighbors that have impacted our lives in many strange and wonderful ways. I'd like to tell you about 4 of them. Now, to the right of our house lives Paul. And Paul's lived next to us for 20 years. And Paul's a retired welder, and he's a kayak enthusiast. And Paul is very, very handy. Now, I am not handy. I have an adversarial relationship with all kinds of machinery. Lawnmowers, snow blowers, sump pumps, pool pumps, cars. I have neither the desire to fix them or do anything about them. And I think early on, Paul noticed my disdain for machinery. Because every time I would go in the back of my house and open up the hood of my car or the door to my garage, Paul would come over and he'd say, can I help you with anything? And then I would just stare in utter amazement as Paul would actually fix things. And I would swear to Paul, I said, Paul, I'm going to learn how to fix things. But we both knew I was lying. we did. So once a month, I buy a 30-pack of Bud Light, Paul's favorite, and I bring it over to his porch, and we share a few beers. And it kind of eases my conscience. Our second neighbors I want to tell you about live right behind our house. And they've lived there for approximately 6.75 years. Now they are a large family, and a couple of their older are young adults now. And in the summertime, they like to wash their cars and play their music very loud. Now, I swear to God, I'm chilling in my purple Speedo in my above-ground pool, sipping a Tanqueray and tonic, listening to the Indigo Girls, got my inflatable flamingo, and suddenly the thump, thump, thump of their bass just destroys my karma. So I get out, I towel off, I mosey down behind the garage, right to the wire fence that separates our properties. I get their attention. I said, please, can you just lower the volume? And they say yes, they lower the volume. And I get back in the pool, I get comfortable again, and that thump, thump, thump just comes back with a vengeance. A couple of years ago, one hot July day, I'm in there. They got their music going. I had enough. I went down to my cellar. I dusted off my old boom box. I put it behind the garage next to that fence that separates our properties. I took Barry Manilow's greatest hits CD, Mandy. Oh, Mandy, oh, you came and you gave without taking, but I sent you away, blared over and over and over their thump, 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 till the neighbors behind our house surrendered and lowered the vine. And this incident taught me a valuable life lesson, that sometimes when things get down, you just gotta barre your way through. Now my third little incident with neighbors involves neighbors who live 2 houses to the left of us. It's a young couple, and they have a couple of young kids, John and Steph. And beautiful house, they keep their lawn very well manicured, have a nice garden. But my wife and I were walking by it a few weeks ago, and I noticed a for sale sign on their lawn. And Steph was out there in her garden. I said, Steph, what's going on? Why are you moving? And she told us that John's parents had given them 4 chickens from their house in Maine. And they put the chickens in the backyard, and they love the chickens, and their kids love the chickens. One of the neighbors squealed to Worcester Animal Control. And they told them they had to get rid of the chickens. So that's why they're moving. You know, I was outraged. I was just outraged. Before they bought that house, 4 pre-med students at UMass rented it. And it was party every weekend. You know, and besides, with all the economic and social turmoil going on in Worcester, with gang shootings, with COVID, with this construction everywhere, you would think 4 chickens in a backyard would fly under the radar. I'm not the most empathetic person. You can ask my wife, I'm just not. And most of my favorite animals, they're on my dinner plate. But as the elder statesman of Alvarado Avenue, I felt I needed to do something. So like an old Mickey Mantle, I stepped up to the plate. I told Steph, you can have the 4 chickens come and stay in our backyard. They can hide in our backyard. I said, we're an old white couple who've lived here for 30 years. No one bothers us. And Steph looked at me, and she smiled. And she invited us in for lunch. And it was egg salad. And it was delicious. And a couple of days later, when we walked by their house on that well-manicured lawn, that for sale sign was gone. Now, my final story involves Cindy and I walking. We went to walk the neighborhood. And this happened, really when COVID was really tough, maybe April, May of 2020. And we're walking up Upper Alvarado Avenue, and we go by this apartment complex. And in the apartment complex, right in the doorway, there's a young man, a large young man. And as I'm walking by, he shouts at me, he goes, hey, put your mask on. I had already had kind of a tough day. I just retired, didn't know how money was gonna go, and stuff like that. And I just kind of snapped. And I looked at him and I said, hey, mind your own goddamn business. Just my wife and I, we're walking by ourselves. Shut up. And I looked at my wife like that. And we walk up about half a block. Cindy stops and she looks at me and says, he's challenged, right? He lives with his mom in one of the apartments. And I said, oh, shit. A few days later, I'm walking up Upper Alvarado by the same apartment complex. And I see the young man. He's in one of the patios. And I wave and I say, hey, how you doing? And he kind of looks. That's a crazy old guy. I said, how you doing? I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I went off the other day. I was having a bad day. I said, I want to apologize. What's your name? He said, Ben. I said, oh, Ben. I said, take care. He smiled at me. And he waved back. I felt kind of good as I continued my walk. So that, ladies and gentlemen, are the 4 stories about my neighbors. And I think you can see that as the elder statesman of Alvarado Avenue, I've grown through these experiences. I've learned to be passive as necessary with Paul, so he can do shit for me. I've learned to be aggressive, but musical, with my neighbors behind our house. I've learned to be contrite with I'm sorry, not contrite, empathetic with Steph and John and the 4 chickens. And finally, I've learned to be contrite with my new buddy, Ben. There's an old rock and roll song by Dire Straits that says, "We are all brothers in arms." Just make sure if your dog poops on my lawn, you pick it up. Thank you.